Saavedra and Silverman et al. The Button Boy Study. Introduction. The phobia of buttons. How did it start? This odd phobia of buttons developed when a 9-year-old boy had a traumatic experience. He was in class and was reaching for a bowl of buttons. His hand slipped and the bowl of buttons fell over him. The whole class laughed at him, which made him severely stressed and anxious. After this, he started linking the stress and anxiety experienced to the buttons, which conditioned him to fear the buttons, starting his phobia. Background. Saavedra and Silverman's history in phobia treatment. Saavedra and Silverman focused on treating phobias through different theories of learning. They had studied operant conditioning before in relation to treating phobias. They had studied blood phobia in adults and spider phobia in children. Despite that, they hadn't attempted to manipulate feelings of disgust yet. The aim. This study had two aims. First of all, they wanted to examine and study the role of classical conditioning in relation to the fear of a neutral stimulus. They also wanted to see if phobias can get treated through exposure therapy. In the diagrams below, you can see how classical conditioning works in phobia development and how exposure therapy can be used for phobia treatment. The method. This was a clinical case study in which they studied one participant in depth, analyzing his behavior to buttons throughout the study. The data was collected using self-report, which was through the child. To do this, they created a 9-point feelings thermometer for the boy to explain his level of disgust and fear to different types of buttons and scenarios. The sample. The participant was a 9-year-old Hispanic American boy. He was getting support from a treating anxiety program. He had been experiencing phobia from buttons 4 years prior to the study. The procedure. In this study, they used two different methods for treatment. First of all, they used positive reinforcement therapy. This involved the boy handling the buttons and getting positive reinforcement by his mother. This could be a hug or nice words. These treatment sessions lasted between 20 to 30 minutes. He was observed in how he approached these buttons, if the number of buttons he touched increased or not. Then they used imagery exposure therapy, which involved him using visualization techniques. The boy was asked to imagine buttons falling on him, considering the smell, their texture, and how they looked. He was asked to progress from the types of button he feared the least to the most disgusting ones for him. After each session, self-report measurement was taken from the boy's subjective ratings of distress about the buttons, using the feelings thermometer. The results. The outcome of positive reinforcement therapy caused the boy to have a more positive approach to the buttons, but his subjective ratings of distress raised significantly, which shows how this method was ineffective in this case. On the other hand, imagery exposure therapy had positive results. One example of this was how before this method was used, the boy's rating to the scenario of hundreds of buttons falling on him was rated an 8, which was then reduced to 5 and then 3 after the exposure was completed. Following this, the boy had a 6-month and 12-month follow-up, in which he reported having minimal distress to buttons and being able to wear clothes with buttons normally. The conclusion. Researchers concluded that positive reinforcement therapy improved observable behavior towards a neutral stimulus, but increased the distress of the boys towards the button, which made it ineffective in this case. Image exposure therapy improved his feelings toward the neutral stimulus, which made him less disgusted and anxious towards the buttons, which shows it's the effective method in this study.